Let's uncover the startling history behind everyday phrases as we explore their grisly origins. From fears of premature burial to the Freemasons, prepare yourself for a journey into the darker side of our language. "You're pulling my leg" is a phrase commonly used when someone thinks you're joking. One theory of its origin leads us to London's infamous Tyburn, a site for public executions. The condemned faced the grim sentence of hanging, and for some, the agony of being drawn and quartered, a fate beyond gruesome imagination. These poor souls were often hung briefly, not enough to end their lives, before facing further unspeakable tortures. In this bleak setting, an act of mercy arose. Friends and family of the condemned would gather, desperately hoping to spare their loved ones from the horrors to come. How? By attempting to grab and pull on their legs as they dangled from the gallows. This act, pulling someone's leg, mercifully ended their lives faster and spared them from the torment that awaited. An alternate theory proposes the term stems from mid-19th century Victorian London. During this era, pickpockets seeking to steal from victims would use a tactic of tripping them by pulling at their legs. A peeping Tom, the term for those who engage in forbidden voyeurism, finds its fascinating origin in the bold legend of Lady Godiva. In the 11th century, Lady Godiva, the noble wife of Anglo-Saxon Earl Leofric, undertook a daring quest to lessen the tax burden on the poor citizens of Coventry. Her husband consented to lower the taxes under one provocative condition. Lady Godiva had to ride through the town completely nude. As she embarked on this bold ride, the townspeople, out of respect for her bravery and noble cause, shut their windows and looked away. However, one curious observer, Tom, could not resist the temptation to sneak a few illicit glances and suffered a terrible fate, losing his sight or, in some tellings, his life. From that day on, he was known as Peeping Tom. It's vital to note that this story is largely cloaked in legend, evolving over the centuries. Whether historical fact or mythical tale, Peeping Tom remains an intriguing part of our linguistic heritage, providing a glimpse into the intriguing dance between language and legend. We all adore the eccentric Mad Hatter from Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, but were you aware the phrase, "mad as a hatter," is rooted in historical fact? In the 19th century, people wore felt hats made from fur. The problem was that the process of converting fur into felt required the use of mercury, a highly toxic element. Hatters, the skilled artisans who made these hats, often found themselves in cramped, poorly ventilated workshops. As a result, they ended up breathing in the toxic mercury fumes. Over time, mercury poisoning afflicted their health, causing behaviors that appeared quite mad or irrational. We've all heard of a baker's dozen, that generous 13th roll we sometimes receive. But do you know why it exists and the rather grim law that led to its existence? The tale dates back to 13th century Britain when a strict law known as the assize of bread and ale was enforced. This rule was serious. It stated that bakers could face the grisly penalty of having a hand chopped off if caught selling undersized or low-quality bread. To avoid such a horrific fate, bakers devised a clever solution. They added an extra 13th piece to the batch. This extra item, the baker's dozen, ensured a satisfied customer and kept their hands attached. When we say someone is wreaking havoc, we mean they are creating total chaos. But this phrase possesses a dark and compelling backstory. Originally, havoc was a battlefield command used by Anglo-Norman soldiers, giving them chilling permission to unleash boundless slaughter, destruction, and looting upon their enemies. However, as history progressed into the 14th century, during the reign of Richard II, this cry of havoc was considered too savage. It was officially outlawed, and anyone who dared to raise or respond to it faced the grim fate of execution by beheading. Today, the word blockbuster evokes images of massive cinematic hits. But did you know this term has a dramatic origin in the fiery chaos of World War II? During that turbulent period, blockbuster meant something very different. It denoted enormous bombs, particularly those used by the British Royal Air Force. These formidable weapons were essentially colossal cylinders, each weighing over 12,000 pounds, equivalent to an African elephant, and filled with high explosives. They had the power to wreak havoc upon entire city blocks and large buildings. The term blockbuster itself was coined by the American press, emphasizing the awe-inspiring destructive power these bombs possessed. The fear of being buried alive peaked during the cholera epidemics of the 19th century. Stories of accidental live burials, fanned by doctors' reports in newspapers and tailies in literature like Edgar Allan Poe's Chilling the Premature Burial, spread rapidly. In this eerie chapter of history, our ancestors took measures to prevent being buried alive by mistake. To ward off the terrifying thought of waking up in a coffin, they engineered a solution. They equipped the dearly departed with bell ropes. If they awoke in their premature grave, they could ring a bell to alert those above ground. Hence, the phrase "saved by the bell" was born, signifying a last-minute rescue. And yet, there's a twist. "Saved by the bell" also has roots in the world of boxing, surfacing as slang toward the end of the 19th century. It referred to the moment a boxer on the verge of defeat was saved when the round-ending bell rang. Eventually, this boxing term entered common usage, which casts some doubt on the phrase's true origin. In a tight space where you can hardly move, someone might say, "There's not enough room to swing a cat in here." But when you say this, you aren't referring to the acrobatics of a feline. You're referencing the cat o' nine tails, a fearsome whip with 9 lashes. You've likely heard the phrase, "blood is thicker than water," implying that family bonds always come first. But its original meaning takes a surprising turn. It originally meant the exact opposite. The roots of this saying date back to a time when warriors stood together on the battlefield, shedding blood in the crucible of battle. In this context, it conveyed that the relationships forged in blood on the battlefield were stronger than the bonds formed in the water of the womb. This phrase is closely related to the term blood brothers, which highlights the depth of loyalty between those who have shared combat, sealing their bond in blood rather than by birth. The phrase, "the third degree," commonly associated with long and grueling interrogations, has several compelling origin stories. One notion traces it to interrogation under torture, where 3 escalating degrees of torment were applied. A second theory links it to Thomas Byans, a no-nonsense 19th century New York City policeman who humorously called his tough questioning style the third degree. However, the most probable origin lies in the world of the Freemasons, a centuries-old fraternal society. Their members undergo a series of rigorous interrogations as they progress to the esteemed rank of third degree or master mason. The phrase, "stinking rich," is used to describe someone who is exceptionally wealthy. The source of this expression tells a curious tale, often linked to Victorian England. Back then, if you were affluent, you weren't buried in a standard churchyard. Instead, you would be placed in a crypt beneath the church. Over time, as bodies decomposed, a foul odor would emanate from these resting places. This odor could rise through the floorboards during Sunday services, serving as a reminder of the wealthy individuals interred below, and it literally stank. However, it is important to note that the earliest printed use of this phrase dates to 1925 in a Montana newspaper, where "stinking" appears to be used simply as an intensifier to describe someone's wealth, perhaps with a hint of disapproval. So, while "stinking rich" has a colorful history, its precise origins remain somewhat mysterious. If you enjoyed this exploration of the fascinating origins of popular phrases, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. We'll see you in the next video.